I want to welcome in now Eric Farnsworth, who is Vice President of the Americas Society and Council of the Americas. He joins us this morning from McLean, Virginia. Eric, great to have you this morning. Appreciate you being here. The biggest headline to come from this visit, at least here domestically, is the President Bukele saying that he will not return a man that the U.S. admits was mistakenly deported. Your thoughts on that decision, and also how is this story being received in El Salvador?
Well, good morning. It's good to be with you and your viewers again. It's really an important point, but I think we have to take a step back for a second and recognize that the relationship that President Trump and President Bukele have developed is really quite close. It's political, it's quite personal at this stage. He was the first Latin American to visit the Oval Office, for example, so early in this term with President Trump. And so this relationship is close and developing. It is clear that this unfortunate incident that's occurred between the United States and El Salvador is one that both presidents are aligned on. But it's also the situation that the United States has a lot of leverage with El Salvador at this point for a lot of reasons. And if asked, the president of El Salvador would likely respond affirmatively to a request by the United States. It's a political decision, and it's one that the governments and the courts will have to work out on their own.
Yeah, it's really interesting as we watch this clip of both presidents sitting there, how warm, how friendly, how cordial they look. And their relationship seems to really hinge on Trump's immigration and deportation policies. But talk to us a little bit about what El Salvador gains in return from this relationship.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the immediate return, what they get is money. The United States pays per head of deportees that are sent to El Salvador, $20,000 per head per year. And so El Salvador gains financially. El Salvador also gains in the context of building a relationship with the United States and raising President Bukele's profile internationally. And also arguably El Salvador gains by reducing perhaps the scrutiny that the United States might put on El Salvador's own domestic issues and law enforcement issues as well. Look, there are potential quid pro quos as well. For example, temporary protected status for Salvadoran citizens in the United States. That remains to be seen. Perhaps tariff relief on tariffs that have newly been put on El Salvador and other countries worldwide. So that remains to be seen, but there's a big agenda here if the presidents choose to pursue it.
Yeah, speaking of the sort of economic considerations at play here, I want to also play for you something that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is in Argentina, but I want to play for you a clip of something the president said there after his meeting with Bessent. Take a listen.
At the commercial level, we understand the proposals of reciprocal tariffs that President Trump has worked on, and we are ready to sign a trade agreement along these lines, which will undoubtedly benefit the U.S. as well as Argentina.
So, Eric, it's interesting because sort of the backdrop of all of these conversations is tariffs, right? It's the sort of economics of it all. And I wonder from your perspective how big of a role the China of it all is playing in these backdoor conversations. Notably, Bessent made those comments after this meeting about China that China slammed as maliciously slandering and smearing. Your thoughts?
Well, absolutely right. The tariffs issue has landed like a bomb in Latin America, particularly for countries that have free trade agreements with the United States. They thought perhaps they might be immune from some of the worst tariff rates that might be put on. And indeed, Latin America broadly did relatively better than areas like Asia, et cetera, but everything's relative. The Argentina case is special, though, because Argentina doesn't have a free trade agreement with the United States. And this is something that President Milei has actually requested and put out there. And in that context, the tariffs issue could be a driver toward a closer economic relationship between Argentina and the United States. And so that's one of the countries in Latin America perhaps that could benefit from this, but it's not necessarily a replicable, or example for the rest of the region. It's a country that has a separate agenda and a clear reform agenda that requires the support of the United States. And indeed, the visit of the Treasury Secretary indicates the U.S. is fully supportive of Argentina's reform program. So this could be a continuation of that. Will they end up with an actual free trade agreement? I think that's a long way away, but perhaps steps toward that could be taken. And frankly, I think that would benefit both countries, Argentina and the United States.
Yeah, I take your point that there are some sort of special considerations for Argentina or maybe even El Salvador that can't be replicated. But one thing that I've thought is really fascinating is how nations around the world are sort of trying to figure out, strategize, and understand how best to work with this administration. And I'm wondering if there are lessons or things that Bukele has done well, Argentina has done well, that may serve as a template for other nations around the world struggling to understand how to work with this administration.
Well, it's really a good question. And frankly, it's the question that most leaders around the world are struggling with. You know, how can they advance their own agendas in a way that will be comfortable for the United States? But at the end of the day, they're the leaders of their own sovereign countries, and they're trying to promote their own interests. You'll notice that President Milei and President Bukele are two of the leaders that are closest politically to President Trump. And those leaders have really curated those relationships since well before the inauguration of the U.S. president. There are others in Latin America that have tried similar, perhaps the president of Paraguay and some others as well. But most presidents aren't in that category. And so they are going to have to find ways to really advance their agenda in a way that is mutually convenient. But it's the ones who have that close political relationship that take visits to Mar-a-Lago, that have been part of the CPAC agenda, that have moved forward politically with President Trump. Those are the ones that are finding themselves with White House visits and real support from the U.S. Treasury and others. And whether that's replicable or not, I don't know. But it's clearly a category in Latin America that others are taking a look at.
Yeah, it's interesting. You think about Milei and Argentina and Elon Musk and the chainsaw and sort of how that came back around more recently. Really interesting to watch and great to have your perspectives and insights this morning. Thank you. That's Eric Farnsworth. I appreciate the time this morning.
Thanks so much.